In 1983, Brian De Palma's now classic gangster film Scarface was released. I say now classic because, believe it or not, Scarface was not the universally acclaimed crime epic it is known as today.
What the fuck is wrong with this guy? Am I kidding me or what?
Rather, critics panned the movie, saying it was an empty, bloated, crass mess, its level of violence and profanity shocking and unprecedented, and the performance of Al Pacino as the now iconic Tony Montana mocked for his Cuban accent.
Manny, look at this pelican flying. Come on, pelican.
The film charted the rise and fall of the volatile Cuban gangster Tony Montana, who builds his empire through bravado and grit.
All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one. Do you understand?
Until, of course, it all comes crashing down due to Montana's instability, paranoia, and the nefarious Cyberdyne Systems Model 101. Money-wise, the film did just okay, but in the home video market it was a big success, over time becoming a big cable hit and, strangely, gaining popularity among the hip-hop community, who often quoted and praised the Tony Montana character. Fast forward to today, and Scarface has cemented a position as one of the all-time great gangster movies, sitting alongside the likes of Goodfellas and The Godfather.
That's all you hear in the joint. Oh man, I didn't have a chance. No, bullshit. I was already a mean little bastard while my mother was alive, and I know it.
10 years later, Brian De Palma released another gangster film, again starring Al Pacino in the lead role with a Caribbean accent, this time playing ex-con Carlito Brigante, though telling a very different story. This time, Pacino was playing a gangster who was already a legend in the underworld before the film starts, but begins the movie concluding a prison sentence, returning to the streets, and in something of a twist to more traditional narratives in the gangster genre, trying his best to leave the life, but finding obstacle after obstacle stopping his escape, until the film ends in tragedy.
The street is watching. She is watching all the time.
Before we continue, please consider subscribing to the channel if you like the video, and consider becoming a patron or channel member for early access to upcoming videos. Again, like with Scarface, though it might not reach the heights of the aforementioned film for most audiences, Carlito's Way is considered a stone-cold gangster classic today. Personally, I've always preferred it to Scarface, but like Scarface, at the time of its release, it received middling reviews. And one key thing critics noted was that it tread similar ground to its older brother. And for sure, if you look online, the two films are often compared and contrasted. It's difficult to talk about Carlito's Way without Scarface being brought up and used as a marker to judge De Palma's final gangster film. In many ways, it's a lazy complaint. The two films are very different, in tone alone, with Scarface being this wild, chaotic ride, and Carlito's Way a more thoughtful and somber piece. One is an intense all-night party, and the other is the morning after hangover. But we could argue Carlito's Way doesn't help itself with the comparison to Scarface. Both are made by De Palma, both star Al Pacino doing a distinct accent and playing doomed mobsters, both are gangster films. But what if that's the point? What if the similarities are intentional, in that De Palma is intentionally wanting to draw comparisons between the two films? And let's go further. What if, and I'll provide evidence for this theory in this video, that Brian De Palma is actively responding, apologizing, deconstructing and disavowing the influence and fame of Scarface and Tony Montana through Carlito's Way and Carlito Brigante?
What are you talking about?
That De Palma was as tired of Scarface's legacy as Carlito was of his. You see, any mature reading of Scarface would conclude that it's a cautionary tale, that Montana was self-destructive, flawed, and highly dangerous, his ending inevitable. As Elvira says, "Can't you see what we're becoming? We're losers." But a common takeaway from the film, magnified and amplified by the hip-hop generation that gave the film a cult following, is that Tony Montana is someone to aspire to be, someone to emulate, someone who took no shit from anybody, who clawed his way from the bottom of the barrel to becoming the king of an empire. He embodies the ultimate rags to riches story, and is adored for his unapologetic ambition, raw courage, and extreme self-confidence. Many viewers see him as an underdog, who defied the odds to seize the American dream.
Me, I want what's coming to me.
Oh, well, what's coming to you, Tony?
The world, Chico. And everything in it.
It's always been a take that has confused me. I pondered if people who have posters of Tony Montana on their walls and regularly quote him, if they've even finished watching the film, given he ends up in a pool of his own blood. As I've mentioned in a few previous videos, I actually took this unsavory hero worship of Montana and blamed the film for it, initially dismissing it as rather crass and immature, only warming up to the film years later after I realised my criticisms were misplaced. And this got me thinking. Scarface and Tony Montana have transcended pop culture to becoming icons that, for better or worse, are admired, are looked at as inspirations instead of warnings. And what I wanted to posit today was the theory that Brian De Palma, well aware of his film's reputation and sickened by it, spent 10 years, like his character Carlito, who did 5, reflecting on his choices, thinking hard about the fruits of his labour, and then returned to the crime genre and sought to take Tony down a notch or two, to offer audiences an inverse of the film whose intention was to undo the damage unwittingly done by Scarface, to make a sequel to the film of sorts, where the wild and now legendary Tony Montana survives, cleans up, does his time, and then tries to get out of the life.
I'm retired.
Retired?
That's right.
Retired? You are serious?
For sure, there are similarities between the films. They are two sides of the same coin, with one following a determined man trying to get in and rise to the top, and the other a tired veteran who's been there, done that, and wants out. There's even scenes that seem to mimic each other, and upon a recent rewatch, I found it fascinating how there seems to be a fair few scenes from Carlito's Way that mirror Scarface, but put the titular character in a more unceremonious position. Let's do a rundown of a few. Tony Montana's most famous line is "Say hello to my little friend," which jump-starts a massacre.
Say hello to my little friend!
He comes out of his throne room, which is filled with coke and golden ornaments, full of bravado, with a gun in his hand that is so epic it doesn't even really exist, and begins mowing down goons in spectacular fashion. By contrast, Carlito also delivers a taunting threat to his adversaries.
Here come the pain!
But instead of coming out of a majestic chamber, he's trapped in a toilet, smacking open a door with his hand instead of blowing it apart with a gun, with a measly pistol, an empty one at that, delivering empty threats, tense and fearful. The Scarface shootout is the cathartic climax of the film. The Carlito's Way one is something of an intro to the film. Both men are trapped and against the odds, but only one knows it. And while Scarface has Tony commit a massacre before he checks out, in Carlito's Way, Brigante is presented with the aftermath of a massacre, death everywhere. He laments the wasted life of his kin. There's an empty feel to the way this scene ends, a complete contrast to the release of Scarface's shootout.
You said they were friends, Carlito. But they ain't no friends in this shit business.
In Scarface, it's Tony's one moment of humanity, sparing the wife and children, that comes back to bite him and triggers his downfall. Carlito also had numerous moments of humanity that came back to bite him, in particular, sparing Benny Blanco, the man who ends up killing him. Both refuse to be ruthless at the crucial moment. In Scarface, Elvira is the blonde wife of a drug kingpin, Frank Lopez, who Tony ends up having an empty and hollow marriage with. The first time we see her is after Tony's triumph against the Colombians, and she comes down the elevator and makes her way towards where Tony is sitting, Tony unable to break his gaze from her. In Carlito's Way, the first time we see the blonde Gail, who Carlito wants to rekindle his relationship with, one far warmer and more real than the Scarface couple. While she is busying herself with her dance class, he is outside in the rain, looking like a peeping Tom with a dustbin over his head. The movie opens with Carlito giving a grand Montana-esque speech in the courtroom about reforming.
And look at me, completely rehabilitated, reinvigorated, reassimilated. and finally going to be relocated.
And we laugh along with him, assuming the speech is dripping with sarcasm. But like Kleinfeld, like perhaps fans who praise Scarface for its ballsiness to an aghast De Palma's face, we're shocked and confused that Carlito is sincere in his intent to change his ways. And in the climax of Scarface, Pacino is the aggressor mowing down his enemies, and in Carlito's way, he is being chased, running for his life, and in both films, he is ultimately snuck up on and taken out. Once you see Carlito's way as a reflection of Scarface, Pacino playing the wary Carlito as the ghost of Tony Montana, you can't help but notice these elements. Even Rolando, Carlito's former partner, being played by the same guy who played the chainsaw-wielding Hector in Scarface. It's Tony's victory over Hector's bad deal that opened the floodgates to him. Meanwhile, Rolando is stunned and flummoxed that Carlito is willfully closing the gates on himself. Even both movies' posters are similar. As mentioned, I feel complaints that Carlito's way is a lazy retread to be a lazy complaint in of itself, not least because even if the titular character was a stand-in for Tony Montana, it's an evolved, older, wiser one. Think to the party at the lawyer Kleinfeld's place, the excess, the debauchery, the kind of stuff Montana would involve himself in, and yet Carlito is sitting by himself, away from it all. In fact, the real stand-in for Montana in the film is Kleinfeld, constantly coked out of his mind, paranoid, erratic, unhinged, insecure, and often exhibiting character moments that we can envisage from Tony Montana, like him becoming insecure and irritated about Gail dancing with another guy, when Carlito, his ego having softened over the years, not having a problem with it. Heck, Tony Montana went ballistic when his own sister was dancing with someone. It's Kleinfeld who reminds you more of Tony Montana.
You tell me how it feels with the fucking eels and the fucking crabs coming out of your fucking eye.
Both making drug-fueled, manic decisions that land them in hot water. I guess if we wanted to offer ourselves a little spectrum, we could say there are 4 different versions of Tony Montana in Carlito's way. Carlito is the version that lived long enough to see that he was a villain and the life gave him nothing. Kleinfeld is the current rendition of Montana, and Benny Blanco from the Bronx is the young, hungry version of the character, eager and willing to kill and steal his way to the top, eventually killing Brigante as Montana killed Frank. The film alludes to the connection between Carlito and Benny on numerous occasions, one of the most prominent being when Carlito threatens him saying, "If I ever see you here, you're dead."
Now, if I ever see you here again, you die. Just like that.
But his eyes betray a softness. He doesn't really have it in him. The eyes never lie, Chico, as our Cuban friend might say. Benny, on the other hand, claps back the same insult to Carlito.
If I ever see you again, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
But with the ferocity of Tony Montana. At one point in the film, a character even says to a nauseated Carlito, "This guy is you 20 years ago." Perhaps there is an element of Brian De Palma, wiser and older like Carlito, who looks back on Tony Montana slightly sickened, so gives him a stand-in Carlito's way that presents him as the disrespectful and moronic representative of the new wave of criminals that he is. De Palma doesn't want you to like Benny Blanco, and we don't like him, but he is essentially Tony Montana. If we look at Scarface from a different perspective, from Frank Lopez's perspective perhaps, we would see Tony Montana as the irritating and disrespectful Benny Blanco. And sticking with the idea that Benny Blanco is a younger version of Carlito, and he kills the titular character, well then, in a very real sense, Carlito's past came back to, quite literally, kill him. I'd also throw another version of Tony in there. How about Carlito's young cousin, Guajiro?
That's 30 grand.
He's naive, foolish, he drives around in a conspicuous car and carries around wads of cash on him. And crucially, he idolizes Carlito.
You're a fucking legend, huh?
Is it too much of a stretch to suggest that Guajiro represents the very same hip-hop generation? That guy with a Tony Montana poster in his bedroom, that guy who thinks he's Scarface, who wants to be Scarface, who tries to embody the get rich or die trying mentality, but has no idea of the realities of the criminal underworld. Yeah, I had a dream, but now I'm awake, as Gale says. Scarface is the dream, the fantasy, and Carlito's Way is the stark and tragic reality. And finally, I just wanted to end the video on a curious little piece of trivia that I came across. The book Carlito's Way is based on is called After Hours, the second book in the Carlito's Way series, and the movie had to change its name to Carlito's Way, the name of the first book, because there was already a Martin Scorsese movie called After Hours. Scorsese had to change the name of Goodfellas from Wise Guy to avoid confusion with an 80s Brian De Palma film called Wise Guys, which I've reviewed on the channel. What do you make of Carlito's Way and its relationship to Scarface? Which film do you prefer? What do you make of the theory that Carlito's Way is a put down of the reception to Scarface? Let me know down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.